can't help noticing who just came, because we get exposed here to something and it changes us. I noticed that down in Africa. You can tell the Africans who are Christians by the change in their faces. They look like these electric light bulbs after a while, something shining through. And we get a lot of that in a few days, in 1 week's time here. And I can tell almost infallibly whether you were here a week. Now, you who have been here for several days know what to do at each of these gatherings. You know that you're just to sit there and not tensely, but relaxedly pray that he may speak to you and to everybody else, aloud and in a silence. And if the rest of you never tried that, try it this afternoon, or even if you have tried it. It's a most marvelous thing to a speaker. Most preachers don't like to confess it, but they're enormously, totally dependent upon the congregation. As Glenn said this morning, one person sitting there in judgment can shatter the minute of the speaker so that he just feels helpless. Now, you don't try that on me. But because you'll be disappointed then in that case, and you'll disappoint everybody else. Try the other thing and see what you can do to help God make this a wonderful meeting. It's always as wonderful as the people. The council thought that this afternoon was the right time to talk about the literacy program. The Camp Farthest Out has more wonderful friends of this program than any other organization in the world. You are loyal in prayer. What we call literacy associates around the United States, for the most part, were begun by Camp Farthest Outers. And this is one of the many ways, Glenn's going to reveal some of the others, in which the Camp Farthest Out is beginning to extend its influence to the ends of the earth. We couldn't get along without you, and I feel very much at home this afternoon in saying my fellow partners, in a special, enormously needy field of the kingdom of the world service. We're going to chat together about what we have begun to see. Gradually a vision of the meaning of this literacy program for the world is beginning to dawn on us. We didn't see it at first at all. We missionaries around the world knew that we were converting a great many thousands of people who couldn't read, and therefore they weren't very good Christians. A Christian doesn't stay in persecution, fails, where the Bible is not taught, where he can't read, but where they're Bible reading Christians, there they stand, even though they are persecuted and martyred. And we know that long ago, and we weren't happy about it. Here's a very interesting fact. Universal education is a new idea in the world. 90% of the non-Christian world, even with all our help, cannot read and write. There are about 1,200 million of those people in the world who are unable to write their names. In non-Christian countries, they didn't even have 10%, only 5%, or 4%, or 1%. Afghanistan, where we're going this year, has about 1% of the men and about 1 out of 1,000 of the women who can read. And that was the attitude of the world. They thought, as ancient Greece did, that education and opportunity in the world was for a little minority. The rest, unfortunately, had to be ignorant slaves. And it was not until the Protestant Reformation that we really began to take general education in earnest. The reason was because instead of depending upon the church for our authority, we depended upon the Bible for our authority. We believed everybody ought to go there and meet Jesus Christ and God for himself. Therefore, we had to teach people to read. So, this is the amazing situation in the world today. About 95% or more, in many countries 99%, of the Protestants of the world are able to read and write. It started just where I've mentioned now. It started with children. We taught them, the first Sunday school was to teach people to read so they could read the Bible. It was a literacy campaign in England. Now the Roman Catholic Church, looking to the priest and to the church more than to the Bible, not emphasizing that, where the Roman Catholics are in the majority, that is where they're absolutely in control, less than half the people read, but still many more than in non-Christian countries. And Catholics, I would say, are divided on this subject. I was in the country this year, I'll name it Mozambique, where they conscientiously believe that the African will get along far better if he can't read. And therefore, they don't do anything about it, excepting where they have Protestant competition. Indeed, it is the Protestant competition in the world that has led literacy, education, go as far as it did among children. Wherever you go, you will find the Protestant missions have schools for the children. And you will find that the Catholics have come around to that position in great numbers, although it isn't unanimous by any means. I suspect it's about half and half among them now. But until a few years ago, we didn't think that you could teach an adult. We thought that when you get to a certain age, around 25, we weren't quite sure when it was, your brain began to dry up or ossify, and then you couldn't learn anything as difficult as reading. So you had to catch them young or never. That was the general idea. But we made a discovery. It began around 30 years ago, simultaneously in many parts of the world, that if you use the right method, you can teach people to read. That the method we use now to teach children won't work with adults. This idea of teaching sentences and then words is just too difficult. There's too much to learn. But if you could find a way to teach the phonetics, the letters, quickly and easily and delightfully, then they could pronounce any word and not in English. Because one of the reasons we've been retarded in the world is because the rest of the world's imitated our English education. We have the craziest spelling on earth. Nobody in the world knows how to pronounce every English word. Nobody in the world. They don't in Oxford. I told them so in Oxford last year. Nobody contradicted me. And they certainly don't in Harvard. And they don't anywhere. Nobody on earth is wise enough to know how to pronounce all the words in Webster's dictionary, because we don't know those words, and when you don't know a word, you can't pronounce it, not without looking at the key. But in those languages of Africa, where we were this year, and all the languages of the Pacific Ocean, and all the languages of South America, indeed 90% of the languages of the world, you can teach people to pronounce their language better in 1 week than anybody in the world can English, namely every word. The reason is simple. They have only one sound for A. It's always ah in other languages. They have only one sound for our letter E. It's always A in other languages. They have only one sound for the letter I. It's always E in other languages. They have only one sound for the letter O. It's always O. And one sound for the letter U. It's always oo. Then, if they have any other sounds in their language, we adopt another vowel. For example, aw. We just turn the letter C over, and we've got the sound aw. Well, when you have only one sound for a letter, then as soon as you know that sound, you know the word. You can pronounce it. I discovered this among the Moros down the southern part of the Philippine Islands. I told you, whether it was yesterday or the day before, night before last, to think about the tragic experience, wonderful experience, the thing that led me to be born again. I think this word must be born again isn't big enough, that sentence. I've heard others say it, and that's my experience. I've got to be born again and again. And that happened out there on that wonderful Signal Hill experience. And then I went down among the Moors, and I found some of those priests, and I began to study the Koran with them, and pretty soon they said to me, now, we'd like to learn English. You see, they were their own worst enemies, as hate always is. They hated Americans. We hated them. We'd killed half of them, and that made them hate worse. But I had studied their Koran, and they said, we hate Christians, but we like you. They were trying to make a Mohammedan of me. And now we'd like to learn English. We'll study it from anybody else, but we like you. And so I tried to teach them English. And although I'd been a teacher before, I had never tried to teach these people who couldn't speak it. And I gave it up very soon. Indeed, it's the hardest riddle in the world. I think we've got it solved pretty well now with our new streamlined English that's coming out under Macmillan this year. I think we have at last. Pretty well, not very well. It takes months to teach, where in another language it only take a week. And so I said to them, why don't you learn your own language? Well, we haven't anything to read. We've never printed it. And I said, good, now we'll have a perfect alphabet. And so we adopted one sound for letter and one letter for sound. And all this time, I was praying very hard. These letters of a modern mystic that you've read were being written then to my father, letters to my father. And I was walking on air, having a glorious time with God, and always praying every day. And he was answering. He was getting those lessons better and better until we got so that we could teach people in about 3 days to read with just about an hour a day. And when they're very bright, we could teach them so they could pronounce every word in a day. I've had bright men and women who could learn all those letters, 16 of them is all I had, and one sound for letter, so they could pronounce any word, that is, they could pronounce it slowly in an hour. Now, I don't want you to get the idea that that's the way we teach in an hour, but we do sometimes. And then we found that it was a wonderful way to make friends. The Moors came by tens, and then these priests brought their friends and wanted them to learn too, and then they came by hundreds. Then they began to come by thousands. We had tried to start a church there in that town. We had tried for 15 years, never had any. The Moors wouldn't come near it. If they did, they looked as though they hated the little groups, a dozen people or a half dozen that would meet. But now, when we began to help them with what they needed, then they began to by hundreds and then by thousands, and we were swamped. We had about 20 teachers that we found money enough for. We'd pay them anywhere from $5 to $20 a month. And 400 of them volunteered. And that's the way our campaign began. I think, although most of you heard it, that I'll tell you how we happened to run across each one, teach one. There are two things about our literacy. One is that it's phonetic, and the other is that we try to get everybody to teach, and they love to do it, especially the people just learned. A letter came in 1930 from the United States, from our mission board, saying we're having a terrible depression. We haven't any money for you. So don't spend anything until you hear from us. I don't know whether they had enough money to bring us home, although they did bring half their missionaries home. And so I had to call together these big chiefs, these bloody fighters, the fiercest fighters I've ever met. And I called those chiefs together and all those teachers, and my knees shook, and I was praying hard when I said to them, Dados, that means chief, I have dreadful news. I'm broken-hearted about it. I don't know what to do about it. I got a letter here saying they haven't got any more money. We're having a terrible depression in America. I'll have to discharge these teachers. I can't pay them. I don't know how we'll get along. And I waited. I could see daggers flashing from their eyes. And then up stood Kakaidagalongat. He's a tall Moro with fierce black eyes. He has 13 wives, and I know how he manages them. And he said, "You're not going to stop." And I thought, here goes my head. I said, "What will you do?" He said, "That's easy. I'll make everybody who knows how to read teach somebody else, or I'll kill him." Well, I said, "There's a new idea in education." And I said to the other Moro Dados, he was the big Dado, big chief. I said, "Do you follow Kakadagalongat?" They said, "Yes, teacher die and let out." So, with that totalitarian idea, everybody taught, everybody liked it, nobody died. We had a wonderful time, and that's where each one teach one began, with Kakadagalongat. And then everybody we taught became a friend. When we first went there, it was dangerous to go outside of that town without soldiers. But within 2 years' time, the whole province knew about our madrasa, and they were teaching each other to the remotest corners of the province, and my wife could go. By that time it was safe for her to come down with Bob, our son, and she soon could go to any part of that province alone. She's a nurse. They would have defended her to the death because the word madrasa was the magic word. Well, we learned something, that when you want to win people's friendship, one thing to do is to find something they want badly and do it. And the one thing the Moros wanted was learn to read. They had hated us so that they had burned down all our school buildings that the government of the United States had built for them, 50 of them, and the teacher didn't escape, he died. That's the way they had been. And yet, they knew that they were behind. They wanted to catch up. Appreciate people. Try to understand their point of view, their religion, and help them. And then pray, and you've got the key to their hearts. Well, Dale Carnegie has all of that in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And we learned it there by experience. We saw a vision. A book came from Daniel Fleming, the man that Glenn Clark was talking about this morning. The Marks of a World Christian. And in it he had one sentence that sent us tingling. I read it to the Moros. He said, 3/4 of the human race are so ignorant they can't read a word and they can't write their own names. When I told the Moros that, they said, "My goodness, let's teach the world. We know how now." They were all ready to go. I tell you, those fellows, when they get behind something good, that's true of so many bad men. If you get Stalin behind good, he'd be the greatest power on earth for good. He's the greatest power on earth now. And you get men like that, the worst of them, Starr Dailies, behind something good. They make it go. And these fellows were out right away to go out and teach the whole world to read. And we started over the Philippine Islands. The little Theodore Roosevelt Jr., I loved him. He was a little fellow, but he had a big heart like his father. And he came down there and he saw this thing, a room filled with these Moors, and he clucked his tongue and he said, "My goodness, we must do this all over the Philippine Islands. I'm going to start an adult education program for the Philippines." And he did. And they invited me, the National Christian Council did, and the government, to help make lessons like these we had in Moros land all over the islands. And we found the Malay language is just like the Moro language everywhere. So we made lessons in 20 languages, and it was going. And then meanwhile, God was doing these things. It was so easy because I didn't have to do them. He did them. A girl from the United States who had read something about this literacy program named Minnie Schultz wrote and said, "If I pay my own way, would you use me as a secretary?" Well, would I? I said, "Certainly, come on." And so she came, and she was a horse to work. She didn't enjoy anything but her work. And so she said, "Write a letter, and I'll send it to the missionaries around the world and tell them what you're doing." So we got together a list of 500 missionaries, and she wrote singly, the same letter 500 times and send it around. And they were just like we were. They wanted to find out how to solve this problem all over the world. And so they wrote letters and said, come and see us. So when we took our first furlough, we went around the world the other way instead of coming across the Pacific Ocean. It only cost us, we invested the money ourselves, about $200 or $300 extra, beyond what the board would give us. And we visited Singapore and worked there. And we went to India, and it was harder there. Because India does have a harder alphabet, harder languages than they have in the Malay areas, but it did work rather well. Missionaries are the only people who believed in it, though. All the rest of India was in utter despair. It couldn't be done. They had 340 million people who couldn't read and write. 92% of their people. And I saw Gandhi the first year I was there, but he didn't think it could be done. He said, you've got to solve the economic condition first. And he shook his head and said, I'll watch you with interest, but I don't think it can be done. Well, in 2 or 3 years from now, then I'll tell you, Gandhi and all the rest of India believe it could be done. We went on over to Turkey, helped them make their lessons there. They've had a good campaign since. We went to Egypt and to Lebanon and Syria, and then home. And there are some businessmen in New York. God's always ahead of you when you're doing what he wants done, getting things ready. I'm just as superstitious as I can be about that. And it works all the time. When a thing works uniformly all the time when you're trying to do God's will, then it's all right to be superstitious. If a thing happens once or twice or 3 or 4 times, it may be accident. But when it happens all the time, it isn't. It's cause and effect. A group of businessmen in New York City heard about this, and they said, let's form a committee and help this fellow so he doesn't have to pay out of his little missionary salary for these trips around the world. That's what we did that first time. So they formed the World Literacy Committee, friends in New York City, and began to supply some money. So the next time we went back to the Philippine Islands, we would be able to run over to China and over to India and down to Sumatra and Ceylon and over to Africa. And everywhere we went, we found 2 things. It could work, but every language presented new difficulties. Then we found something else. We knew that the world needed to learn to read, but we didn't know that it wanted to learn to read. But as the years have been going by, these last 20 years of travel around the world, we've made a discovery. The world's education mad now. This 3 out of 5 is what it is now. Gone down, but it's still, out of every 5 people in the world, 3 who can't read and write. They're no longer like they used to be. They used to be in a state of sullen resignation. Indeed, it was rather wicked to change. The old tradition was, you've got to be like your parents. If they were ignorant, you got to be ignorant. If they were leather workers, you have to be leather worker. If they were agriculturalists, you must be. You mustn't change. But the idea of progress has got around the world. And now this vast population, these people at the bottom of society, who since the pyramids were in a state of sullen despair, nothing they could do about it, are still sullen, but they don't despair. They are desperately determined to come up. They're going to better their condition. Nothing can stop it now. They're coming up. I know what I'm talking about. I've worked in 68 of these backward countries, and I've seen them, and invariably they're that way. A new thing is broken upon the world. Edwin Markham's poem, when that dumb thing speaks after the silence of the centuries that made your blood curdle, that thing's happening now. It's happening because we have tied the world together in a new network, and they know what we're like now. They see us terribly distorted in the motion pictures. They're always richer, they're always worse than we are. They have seen our tourists, they've seen our hotels, they've seen our airplanes, our automobiles, they've seen our fine homes when we're over there, And now they know that we are not like them. The whole world isn't like they are. They know it now. They've seen us. Then come along the communists and say to them, you don't have to stay down there. The trouble is these people at the top, your government, and these foreigners are your enemies. Chase them out, overthrow your government, and take over. Now that's the communists. They're stirring up this enormous demand to come up. And whether you like it or not, there's only one thing we can do to survive. We've got to help them up. If we don't, they'll hate us. They'll believe the communists. Now, that's one thing we discovered, that they believe that the only way up, that is, they do right away as soon as a missionary tells them, the only way up is through education, that knowledge is power. The communist tells them revolution is the way up. But it doesn't sound good to them when they hear the other. The reason we're the way we are, as progressive as we are in the United States, easy to tell them, is because we know how to take the minerals and the soil and all these natural resources and turn them into better conditions. And if you knew that, you have just as rich resources as we have. That's very obvious to them as soon as you tell them. And so, every country in the world where they're backward today is just simply education mad. Just been in Africa all this year until a few weeks ago. And everywhere we went in Africa, Bob and I and the Phil Gray and Ewing Gray, also great CFOers, we forward out there, and everywhere we went, we found the schools jammed. All you have to do is open a school and you can't contain the little children that come. Now the older people too, since they're like this grapevine telegraphs going around the world, that they can learn to read easily and quickly and swiftly, and so they throng us. It's worse than it was at dinner today when we have a literacy campaign. We're just simply overwhelmed. This year we were in Portuguese East Africa, West Africa, Angola, West Africa's called. We didn't know whether they would even allow us to stay there because we had heard that the Portuguese government was not sympathetic with literacy. And it wasn't true in Angola. It was to some extent true in Mozambique. But we started a campaign and the missionaries let the news out that we were going to teach people to read, and they had 4 times as many people as they could feed that came in from all directions. It just went like wildfire. And so we pulled together everybody around there who knew how to read to help us, and we trained about 400 teachers, and then had every one of them take somebody. Some of them took 2 or 3. We don't believe in that. Each one should teach just 1 for the best results. Sit down beside him, and we started our campaign for a week. We had these lessons made. Fortunately, before they expected us, we arrived there. So we had 2 or 3 days to make the lessons and mimeograph them. And we made 2,000 copies and then started with them. And at the end of a week, they were so eager to learn and working so hard that 396 of them had finished that first little book and were able to read it all. So we could consider them stumblers, at least, if they weren't readers. They could read every word in their language, which nobody in this room can do in English. And so we gave them a head of graduation. We always do now. We teach them for a week. And then we had all those new literates come into this meeting. Some of them Christians, and most of them never been in church before. And all those who had taught them over on this side. And we had them come up and receive a diploma. They had finished the first book. And so this said, this certifies that this person has finished book 1 of literacy and is therefore entitled to this diploma and is ready to read the second one, the story of Jesus. They all came and sat down tingling. And then all these who had taught them came forward and they received a certificate of patriotic service and Christian service because they'd opened the eyes of the blind and helped these people on to a new life. And then we told them all, now you're going to learn the story of Jesus. For the second book, we always teach is that. That was in Dondi. Well, I could just keep on all the rest of this afternoon telling you that thing. We are always, not only surprised but overwhelmed, just as we were in Lanark, because they want to learn to read so badly. You can't go to a non-Christian country and stand up in a soapbox and get a crowd. They're prejudiced against us. Their religious leaders tell them we're wrong. And besides that, they've seen so many white people who have exploited them. The white man has been exploiting the colored race of the world so long that that's prejudiced them against us. You can't get up and talk religion because there's nobody to listen to you. Every missionary knows that it isn't enough to get to the country. Then you got to get to their hearts. But when you go and say, we know what you want to come up, you want to better your condition, we're going to help you. You have to chase them home at night. Last year, we went to the wildest area in the world. It's true no matter how wild they are, how primitive they are, how dangerous they are. This wild area was New Guinea. There are cannibals in the interior of New Guinea. Nearly all of them are. Nobody knows how many there are, because you can't go in there and come out uncooked. And so the government doesn't go. There's one of the funniest countries in the world. The government doesn't send soldiers in among them because they don't come back. They send missionaries. Now the missionaries have already converted the people on the outside, on the periphery of New Guinea. That, by the way, is the biggest island in the world, excepting Greenland. Greenland's bigger, but nobody lives on it. Perhaps 200 or 300 people. I flew over Greenland just on the way home a few weeks ago, and all you can see is an enormous level plateau of ice a mile deep. So that's Greenland. But New Guinea is quite different. It's all green, wonderful mountains, wonderful plateaus. And we went there and made lessons on the coast of New Guinea in 17 languages. Nobody knows how many languages there are in that country. But a lot of the cannibals on the coast have been made Christians, and when they are Christians, they're wonderful. They really put us to shame. The cannibals are like those Moors I talked about. When you get them headed in the right direction, they're wonderful. They're powers. One church, one of the missionaries told me he had baptized 150 people on the coast. But he said they all left the church, every last one of them. They went into the interior as missionaries, self-supporting, to convert cannibals. Have you had any churches in America that are empty because everybody's gone out as a missionary? That's wonderful. Well, after we made these lessons, the government is exceedingly anxious for the missionary to solve the problem in New Guinea. And by the way, you don't dream how many governments lean on missionaries to solve their nasty problems of the people like that. And so the governor of New Guinea, an Australian, entertained us, and he's home, flew up there to the north coast with us. And then when we made these lessons, he tested them out himself with illiterates. He didn't go with us to the interior where the cannibals are, but he sent us up there, 20 of us. There were some of them teachers, and most of them missionaries. Now the missionaries got a beachhead up in the interior in one place. They had persuaded these people to stop eating people. And so when we arrived there, they assured us that they hadn't eaten hardly anybody for 15 years. Which made us feel very comfortable. And then we had to fly because all around us, north, east, south, and west, were nothing but cannibals. They had not yet been reached by anybody. And we landed there. During the war, our soldiers had made a landing field there, where that missionary was. And we landed there, and there were just thousands of these people in that field. The missionary had told them we were coming to make them able to read and help their condition. They were crazy about it. In half an hour, we had the charts up, beginning to teach them to read. And they were thronged as far as they could see. We had made these charts before we arrived down at the coast. One of them had come down and had helped make these charts. He was the only one who knew how to read. There are 40,000 people in that tribe. They were all eager, and when night came, we had to chase them home. The next morning, before we were up, we heard a buzzing and a noise of subdued voices and louder voices, and we looked out, and there was a vast sea of those people come to learn the next day. And every day we taught them. We had a little mimeograph machine with us, and we made 750 copies of those lessons, and we 20 went to work, hard as we could, one on each side, about 100 behind us, trying to look over our shoulders at these little lessons. And And every morning we had them there all day, and at night we had to chase them home. And at the end of a week, we 20 had been able to teach 42 of them so they could finish the first book. And we had a graduation. And a great crowd there, as many as could look on while we gave these 42 diplomas. And then we said to them, now you're promoted. You become teachers from now on. I want you to teach all the rest of these. And then everybody was happy. And they went outside, and there were 16,000 people. That's the count. That is the best we could do, we 20, in estimating them out there on that big field, the landing field, full. And they danced and marched and jumped and shouted all day long to celebrate this event. There were 600 chiefs among them, best-dressed people in the world, from here up. They had birds of paradise on their heads. That's the only place birds of paradise grow in the world. They have something similar in Africa, but not the genuine article. These men had these marvelous colored plumes sticking out of their hair, out of their heads, and they had seashells in their noses and around their necks, and their faces painted as I've never even seen a woman in America paint her face. And they were gorgeously dressed. Now, it isn't necessary to mention what else they wore. It wasn't much. From here up, marvelous. Those big chiefs with their bows and arrows and their spears and their battle axes, the new Stone Age is where they are now, the stone battle axes. They marched all day, and then they met in the afternoon and had a big council meeting. And when they got through that, about 2 hours later, they marched over to us. Their big chief said this: we've been holding a council meeting of our tribe. This is the greatest event in our history. You've done more for us than anybody that ever lived. We like your religion, and we've decided we want to become Christians, and we want you to baptize everybody here this afternoon, 16,000. All they said, excepting us chiefs, we're in trouble. They tell us that we can't have many wives, and all of us have. And we can't think of any way that you'd approve of to get rid of them quickly. But we'll get rid of our surplus as fast as we can, and we want you to baptize us too. We're in earnest. We like your religion. It does so much for us. Now there's the key to literacy. It does so much for them that it makes them they want our religion. That's true all over the world. Not only are these people in all these countries I've visited mad to learn to read now, since they've found out that it's the way up, but also the governments are with us. They weren't at first. Everywhere one goes, the first time he goes, the government's not with him. But the second time you go, they're convinced. They've seen what happens. They've seen how eager the people are, and they begin to believe that illiteracy is enemy number one. For example, last year we went to India, and I nearly got killed this time with hard work and kindness. The Indians are now free, and they're also frantic. There are still more than 85% of them unable to read and write, and they're going to give them a vote. And they see perfectly well, because they're smart men, those leaders in India, that they're going to have government by, of, and for the illiterates. 85% of those who vote won't know what they're voting about, and that won't do. So they're determined to learn to read. And as soon as we got there, by the way, all the lessons that are now being used in India are those which we made in 28 languages, but they're out of date, and I wish I could go and revise every one of them. We're learning every year how to do this better and better. And the first time, between 35 and 40, when we went there, we didn't know the best way yet. That had to be learned by experience, trial and error. Well, this year, they wanted this campaign to go, and so they grabbed us at Calcutta almost before we got off the plane, or as soon as we got off, and whizzed us around from one place to another. Government officials everywhere. The missionaries didn't have much chance this year in India. because the government was so desperate about it. And we did our best in the short time we had there in India and Pakistan to make a few lessons so they could go on and make the rest revisions and show them how to start the campaign. You see, if everybody who knows how to teach is asked to teach as a patriotic service, and each one teaches one, the country could be taught by geometrical progression. In many countries now, they declare war on illiteracy. Down through South America, we did that down there during this last war because we couldn't go to Asia and Africa. You'll find a campaign now in almost every country of Latin America. And in many of them, they have declared war, and they require you to teach or to learn or to pay in Latin America. That's the way they do in Mexico, and that's the way they do in Ecuador. And they're having wonderful campaigns there. As a matter of fact, millions are learning every year in South America alone. That's the way it was this time when I was speaking about in India. Until I was, with their kindness, keeping me up day and night, their hard work, I was glad to escape to Pakistan. And up there it was worse. There they have 98% of the people illiterate. And of the women, well, it's pretty close to 100. It's very illiterate, and they know that won't do there for them. And so they're anxious to learn to read. Mohammedans though they are, I love Mohammedans. When you approach them this way, they love you. And when they feel that they're your brothers, they are wonderful friends. It's true they fight and yell, and you think they're going to kill one another for a little while, and then they forget it all, and they don't fight with us, and they just plunge into it again. I love them. By the way, this year, we have been invited by all the Mohammedan countries of Asia and Africa, by all of them, to come and help them with a great campaign that they're going to put on now. And we're going next December. And all the countries we visit will be these countries that have invited us. I mean, it will be Algiers and Tunis and Egypt. And if we're willing, we'll go to Syria and Iraq, and we're going to Iran and Arabia, and Afghanistan, where there isn't a single missionary in all Afghanistan. They wouldn't allow them. But they've asked us to come and help them with their literacy. And then we're going on down to the Dutch East Indies, which are now called Indonesian Republic, and that's primarily Mohammedan. And these Mohammedans are now crazy for education. Now, the reason why the governments are so anxious, with the exception of, well, I was going to say Portugal, but we just got a letter since I came here, and it's a thriller, from Angola, Portuguese West Africa. Well, I knew one thing, that one of the governors came and gave away the diplomas in Angola, in the very country where we thought they were going to be against us and wouldn't allow us to establish this campaign. This letter says that in another province, the governor is going to sponsor and push this campaign all he can. So I can say without a single exception on earth, every government now is doing something to get rid of its illiteracy. Every government in the world. And I'll tell you one of the reasons. Very interesting reason. The communists are going down there and infiltrating with their propaganda among the masses, the illiterate masses, and saying to them, look how hungry you are, look how sick you are, look how exploited you are. That government's your enemy, overthrow it. And now the governments around the world are on their good behavior, trying to prove to their people that they love them, and the way to prove it is to give them what they want. So that's the reason why these governments now, all over the world, are asking us to come and help them with their literacy, because they're afraid of their people. I often feel that, bad as it is, communism is the judgment of God, demanding that we become better. We aren't good enough in this atomic age. We've got to improve. And these nations now know it. And so they stir up the desire and we fulfill it. Now, that's the way the world is today. Marvelous opportunity all over the planet. I could regale you with story after story, but I think I better not try that now. I want to tell you our strategy. I believe that we are one of the factors that will save this civilization from disaster. We could, if America could get awake and see this vision. I sometimes feel so desperately weak because I can't help the United States to see what I see. The problem isn't abroad. They're all ready. All the illiterates want you, all the governments want you, America, if you come out unselfishly to help them, not for profit, but for the love of Christ. Come out and witness, and while you're witnessing, teach them. Now we are going to these churches. There are 12 million Protestant Christians and about the same number of Catholic Christians. And wherever Catholics want us, and we can, we help them too. We want to train these Christians, each one to teach a non-Christian illiterate, of which there are 1,200,000,000. That is to say, about 1,000 of them for every Christian. We want to have them teach one, and win him while he teaches him. Governments don't care. You can witness all you want to. Everywhere I go, I don't know a single place yet that's prevented you from teaching and witnessing at home. So we'll mobilize our churches to do it. I think I'll tell you about Egypt. Mrs. Laubach and I were over there in Egypt. We'd been invited by King Farouk. And he said, now, my people want to learn to read. And I want to please them. And I want you to make these lessons the best you can. Then I'll pay for the printing of them. And I said, Your Majesty, I suggest that you teach somebody yourself to set them example. He said, I will teach my servants. Then I said, I suggest also that you declare war on illiteracy and then tell everybody to follow your example in all Egypt. Everybody's expected to teach somebody. He said, I'll do that. And then we made the lessons and he paid the bill. For the first time in the history of Egypt, Christian missionaries and Christian pastors and Mohammedan educators sat down in perfect harmony and made these lessons. And then down through Egypt there went little Helena, an Egyptian Christian girl. Good speaker. She'd helped make the lessons, the only woman on the committee. She went down through Egypt and called all the women together in the Christian churches of every denomination. She said to them, King Farouk commands us to teach. Well, most of us can read. All right, let's teach a woman behind purdah. That means a Mohammedan woman who can't go out on the street without wearing a veil. Go home to her home and teach her and win her to Christ if you can. King won't care, so long as you make her literate. And down through Egypt went Tanus, the Egyptian minister, said the same thing to all the Christians. And then they went to work, and we're getting thrilling accounts of great campaign going on down through Egypt. And not only is the government willing for us to make them Christian, but the government's praising us for making them literate. That's all over the world. You see, the world's wide open. If America were wide open, we could walk in and win the world with love and service. So we train these churches this way. We have a big chart or lantern slides, and we show them these lessons and tell them exactly what to say. Well, it isn't very hard to tell them how to teach. We make them so that all they have to do is go across the line and don't talk much. And then the psychology of the adult is the main thing we have to teach them. You never scold. You never frown. You see, you have an ulterior motive. While you're teaching them, you're trying to make him love you and love the Christ in you. So all the time you teach, you just pray and love hard as you can. And you never say no to him, because adults don't like to be contradicted. You just cut that word out of your vocabulary. You never ask him a question he can't answer. Never. You have to think ahead. Tell him what he doesn't know and ask him what he does know. Don't tell him what he knows. Let him answer all he can. And all the time you're teaching him, you just look there amazed at him. He's amazed at himself. He just didn't believe it possible. He's so thrilled and proud of himself, and so you look astonished too and say, my, you're doing fine. When did you learn to read? And you say, I never saw this before. Are you sure? Well, you certainly are doing fine. Give him that line. And all that sort of thing. Give him a lot of it, because first, everybody likes it. And even if I like it. Sometimes people exaggerate terribly when they're introducing me. I know it's all a fib, but yet I like it. And everybody likes to have praise, especially if nobody ever praised him before, especially if he's down there in the depths of despair. First time anybody ever saw any possibilities like this in him. And he sees them himself, and the other fellow appreciates him. You can give him the greatest hour of his life. If you love him, you're praying for him, you praise him, you help him. He begins to see the heavens open, and every once in a while you drop a little hint. You're on the way up now, man. This is wonderful. And then you say something like this after a while. My goodness, you've done so well. We need you as a teacher. You see how few good teachers we have in this country. Would you be willing to be a teacher like I am? You're putting yourself on his level, and he loves that too. And if you just know a few of these little things to say, just this Dale Carnegie stuff, they love you for it. And then at the end of the lesson, we have all our church members say something like this. We teach them to be kind, love and appreciation and help and prayer, those four. We teach them that. And then at the end of the lesson, they witness. They tell them a story about Jesus, something like this. Did you notice that all of us church members are teaching people? Did you know why we're doing it? No, you see, we don't ask any money for it. I'll tell you then, if you'd like to know, would you? Yes. We learned it from Jesus. We've read his life, and we love it, because every minute of his day he was helping people. He walked down the road with great love, looking from this side to this side, asking, whom can I help? If they were sick, he had so much love that it went right away. If they were hungry, he had so much love that he fed them. If they were oppressed, he had so much love that he defended the poor people. If they were caught in some sin of some kind, some vice they couldn't get rid of, it was ruining their lives, he saved them from that. If they were in despair, he gave them new courage. And he taught the most beautiful things in the world. Every minute, from the time he woke in the morning till he closed his eyes at night, he just helped and helped and helped. And he told us to do that too. He loves people so much that he said, every time you help anybody, you're helping me. And that's the reason we're teaching you now. Because he used to open blind eyes, and anybody who can't read is blind to the greatest things in the world. The whole secret of progress, of civilization, is the secret of being able to read. And so, give him the credit. That's the first story. Then the next day we tell him some other story about the man born blind, and another story about the Good Samaritan, another story about the cross, another story about, he's here yet. He sees in you possibilities you never dreamed. Already you begin to see some of them, don't you? Well, it's far, far higher than you ever dreamed. Just give him your life. Well, in about the third or fourth day, he wants to pray with you. And then we pray. And it's as easy to make them love Jesus and surrender their lives to him as it is to make them literate. That's what we're going to do all over the world. And then after they've come to church and get their diploma, then our second book is the story of Jesus. It just takes the four Gospels, weaves them together in a very simple story. It doesn't improve on them, doesn't change them, just changes the vocabulary. And by the time they've read that, they learn 10 new words a day, and they see every one of these new words 5 times, like the best modern textbooks do for children, for beginners. And by the time they've read those, they can read the Gospels in their own language. So we not only make them want to be Christians, but we lead them right into the Jesus Christ's arms. That's our program. Now there are 12,000 churches. No, 120,000 churches with 12 million Protestant natives and 12,000 missionaries. That's about approximately that. Easy to remember that. And our program now is to train every one of those 12,000 missionaries, those old ones as they come home on furlough, and the new ones before they go out in the art of each one teach and win one, so that they can go abroad and mobilize these churches into a great teaching and winning army for Christ. And if we get that done thoroughly, we're at it now, as fast as we can get the resources and the people to go abroad to help us do it, get them trained, we'll have 12 million new Christians in 1 year. And that'll be 24 million. And we'll have 48 million the next year. It's easy to double every year when you get this program going. That has been adopted now by the Foreign Missions Conference. At their annual meeting last January, they adopted a program of getting some people in every denomination who are experts, who will train their missionaries and go abroad and train them there in literacy and evangelism for the whole world. That opens up that door, but there's a second door that's opened also by this. As soon as these people learn to read, then we have created hungry minds. There's nothing easy enough in many languages and very little in any language for them. Great vacuums created. Now that's good luck too. If they already had plenty of reading matter, they'd read it. But they don't. So if we go in on the ground floor and do it, if we create this reading matter, we have for a long time a monopoly. They can't read the ordinary standard literature yet. They can only read short sentences and easy words within their vocabulary. Now we've got to write for them. And that creates also an enormous responsibility, because if we don't do it, sooner or later, somebody else will. You know that China, half of it, was lost to communism since last August, in just 1 year, half of it, without firing hardly a gun. It wasn't done with guns, it was done with ink, propaganda. I wish I had some of those placards and posters that were posted all over China. And the communist Mao Zedong, the great Chinese communist leader, a very well-educated and a very brilliant man, said we have two armies. The army with guns, the army with pens. The army with pen goes ahead. We send our men out who study the vocabulary and the emotions and the needs of these common people, the artisans, the farmers, the soldiers, the petty bourgeois, that is to say, the petty shopkeepers. These people at the bottom of society, they study it, they write for them. Now we've got to learn to do that. Communists are doing it far better than we are. We aren't as zealous about our Christian religion as the communists are about their mistake. They're teaching us something, though. We've got to get zealous and do this. So the Foreign Missions Conference voted again to train all of those 12,000 missionaries in the art of simple writing. We Christians have been writing above the heads of the masses. One of the things we're beginning to be very sorry about, to repent of, is, even in America, the laboring classes, the labor unions are not in our churches as much as they ought to be, because we didn't want them as much as we ought to want them. We didn't write for them. We didn't talk to them. Our sermons are too cultured. We talk above their heads. And that isn't nearly as bad here as it is in other parts of the world. Excepting some of the missionaries, we have unintentionally missed the masses. Now we're going to write down to them and talk down to them and reach down to them this way. They want us. All we have to do is go and give them what they need. Now they need the Bible, but the Bibles are too hard for them. So we need to write a simple material that make them able to read the Bible, and also write the Bibles more simply. That's one big job for the American Bible Society, and they're at it. And then we must give them many other things. They wanted literacy in order to help them better their condition. So we must tell them how to keep well. So we must tell them how to be better farmers and get more for the work they put into it. So we must tell them how to have better homes, how to raise their children, what to eat, and everything else that will help them to live a more abundant life. And we need thousands of writers. Now I think I'd better not talk to you very much longer. I'll get this. There are only 2 schools so far in which we can train this vast number. That is, one is Hartford Seminary, Kennedy School of Missions. We teach them the art of literacy, and the other is Syracuse University. But we're going to have more very soon. Other schools and colleges are going to get geared to this thing. If any of you want to help us, and I've had so many requests to help here, if you're young and unattached or able to go abroad, and you want to devote your life, as some of you already are planning to do, then all you need to do is write to our World Literacy Committee, and we'll tell you what to do and help you do it if we can. As you see at once, this great literature program that must follow literacy is vast. We do seem to get enough money to go out and make the lessons and start the campaigns because the governments take them over. I wish they wouldn't. I mean, they let us do it. They ask us to help. But whether we help or not, they're going to do it. 10 million new people a year now are learning to read. In the last 30 years, 250 million have learned to read. And they've got to be given something good or else they'll get something bad. Whether literacy is good or bad depends on what they read. And we've got to solve that problem. We have discovered a great discovery and also a terrible new problem. Terribly big, but I'm not scared about it. I believe as soon as America gets awake, she's already awakening so rapidly, that she will measure up to this wonderful opportunity. And then several of you have said, couldn't we write here in this country? Now, as is obvious to you, the kind of writing matter that they like best has local color, has local characters and local objects, and builds upon their own old stories and their own ideas. And that's hard for us in this country to imagine, so that we can write for them. Although some people are doing some of that, for example, in the realm of health. But here's something that I wish many of you would do. There are several things you can do to help us with this great literature program. First of all, be our research men and women. Look for things that have been written that you think would be fine for the whole world to have. And then recommend them to us. We can't go through literature. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack or diamond to find these things. But when you find a diamond, send it to us and tell us about it. As a rule, it'll be too difficult. Language too hard. The sentence is too long, too complicated. And so the second thing you can do to help us is to take our word list and write some of these down, just attempt a page or two or a chapter, and then send it to us and see if it's all right. Writing it in short sentences and easy words. And then the limited vocabulary, 1,600 words that we've chosen. The Thorndike word list and the basic word list have been put together. They seem to be the two best we have in the world, and right within that limit. And then see, well, and make it just as readable as it was before so that nobody would know it was touched. Only it'll be simple, cutting the long sentences in two. The dependent clauses become independent clauses. And thus you can be of help to us at that point. As researchers for the material already written, you probably will do better than though you try at the beginning to do it yourself. Though you like to write also, well, do that too, but especially do this other thing. And I'm sure you can help us. We wish we had a staff of 1,000 at work, hunting up out of the millions of things that have been written, those things that would be useful for translation into other languages. And then here's another thing that we'd like to have done. I have in my hands here a list of the best missionary books that we have thus far found that have thrillers in them. That if you saw one of these mystery stories and one of these here beside it, you'd refer this to the mystery story. We want to reach the people of the United States who don't believe in missions because they're ignorant. I tell you, America's dreadfully illiterate about the opportunity around the world. And one of the things you can write for is magazines. Get some more articles like this one in Collier's that Whitehead has written. And like the one that was in Reader's Digest and that you've seen elsewhere. Write for magazines, secular and religious. And let's help this country. Because the problem isn't abroad. The problem of saving the world is America. To get away from our turned-inness on ourselves. Our mutual admiration society here in America, in which we left the rest of the world out. And so you can do more good here with your writing than you probably could abroad. We'll find the writers and we'll find everything else if we can get America stirred up. So I'd like to have you take one of these mission books we have here. We have about 400 or 500 of them that we've discovered around the world, but we haven't read them this way. You know, Reader's Digest takes a book, and it boils it down. It just takes the high-powered stuff out of it, and then it puts a book at the end of the Reader's Digest, but it's only the best of it. Take some of these, one of these, and pick out the best, something that would be so good that it would, Conan Doyle or Ellery Queen couldn't be a rival to it. Get it so good. I tell you, the greatest adventures, the most exciting life on earth is among the missionaries. All over the world there are wonderful stories, but they don't know how to tell them very well, and so they've mixed their interesting things in with a great deal of other material. So cull it out, write it, and send it to us. We're going to make a 1-foot shelf of the greatest missionary thrillers ever written, and we're going to put it together in a box, beautifully decorated and illustrated, and then we're going to try to sell it to every home and every church and every Sunday school and every library in the United States. You want to help us? That's one of the things we need done. Well, I think I've talked long enough now about this. I want to just end up this way. With this one particular technique which we have developed as missionaries, and the wonderful way in which the world responds to it because it meets their need, has opened our eyes to the fact that if America would meet the world's needs in technical skills, the other things they need to come up to a more abundant life, and would send out Christians who love their fellow men, who love the Lord Jesus Christ, who know how to witness at the right time without offending, but by how to woo people to Christ by first showing him in their lives, shining out in their loving actions, and then witnessing. If we could get the church to do that, my goodness, we could easily save the world. Well, this isn't a hard problem. Not at all. It's too easy. It's amazing. I have more fun than anybody in the world because they respond so well when we come to them just with love and appreciation and service, as we're doing now. And if America would only do that, if she could only become Christian enough to do it, we could easily save the world. Glenn and Sam Shoemaker and Stanley Jones and Walter Judd and a dozen of us prepared a program and sent it to the Foreign Missions Conference, telling them this thing. And the Foreign Missions Conference has been working at it little by little. Now we have an agricultural missions foundation, and we're trying to get missionaries, agricultural missionaries, to go out and do the same thing in agriculture that we've done in literacy. But we're moving too slowly. We went down, Sam and I, to see Truman about 4 years ago. We told him, President, not only should the churches reach out with our best help to the world, but that's the only way to stop communism. Well, last year, a year ago last January, to our great delight, and the delight of Senator Smith, who went with us that day, my, he's tingling about it, President Truman put in his inaugural address, America must launch a bold new program. Remember, we called that Daring Religion. Glenn, you remember that? A bold new program to help the world out of its misery above the danger line with our technical skills. But that won't work unless Christians do it. And so now, Federal Council of Churches and Foreign Missions Conference and the United Council of Church Women and the Laymen's Movement have organized together a committee, and is looking around the United States to find men and women who have some skill and who have the desire to help the world, and who have a great love of humanity, and who have love of Christ, and a magnificent character, integrity, and honor, to offer them to the United States government and the United Nations. Last November, the United Nations adopted this plan too, unanimously. So I'm tingling now with the confidence that if only we can have a revival so that America will love that much, as Glenn said this morning, not in pretense and words, but indeed love that much, all of this communist scare would disappear. We could easily save the world, and nothing else will do it. That would be the Christian way. Well, the next time I talk, I think I shall show a vision of what I think we already see we could do for humanity. When we talked to Truman about this thing, that little man, who was a very good politician, said, "That's a good idea, but America wouldn't back me if I made a promise like that." He said, "America needs religion. You fellows go out and start a revival." Well, we didn't, or couldn't, or didn't, but he risked it, and he has the backing of the United States. And many people say that's the finest thing he's ever done. I don't mean we got him to do it. I mean we were one of the many who persuaded him that that was safe, good politics as well as a good thing for America. Now I think our Congress is convinced that that's the best program we have for saving America and the world. One thing I know that is the most Christian thing that any country ever undertook. No country since the world was born ever thought of going out and helping the poorest and the lowest and the lost out of their misery by sharing our knowledge with other countries. It never was thought of excepting by mission boards, and then it wasn't done very large on that because the church is not strong for missions. So the last thing you can do today is pray as you never prayed before for the church. For Truman's right, we need a revival. We aren't Christian enough to meet the world's greatest opportunity. Pray not only for our literacy, pray for this whole idea of going out and sharing the best we have and then witnessing and winning to Christ while we share. It's our hope, the world's hope. I thank you for being such good listeners this afternoon. It's so easy to talk that I don't know when to stop. But let's pray. Thank you, Father, for these wonderful friends, for this wonderful CFO that is releasing the best that's in us and helping us to think and be better than our best. We thank thee for what it's doing for America. God grant, Christ grant, that the CFO spirit may conquer the world. No, may be the channel for thee, O Christ, to conquer the world. For all we're doing is without these shackles of custom and ritual and tradition, as free as the air. We're letting thee come through and tell us what to do. God, make America a wide open channel. All our past preconceptions or wrong ideas swept aside so that the Holy Spirit can rush through and make America worthy of such an hour. In this hour when thou art saying, in everything that's happening on the earth, rise to a new higher level or perish, grow up or perish. We plead with thee, Lord, to help America grow up. Help her rise to this opportunity. Help us to go through America as missionaries, for America being the Good Samaritan for mankind, helping mankind with all we know, and while we help her, appreciating her, unselfishly, not for profit, unselfishly for Christ, witnessing first by our lives, then by our love, by our prayers, and by our words. And thus, we can help the kingdom come in and Christ rule in the hearts of men. We love thee, Christ, because thou art so marvelous. We love thee because you need us, because weak as we are, nothing as we are, you still trust us and give us the honor of helping you. Lord Christ, this afternoon we plead with thee that the heavens may open and thy Holy Spirit may fall upon the United States. Give new power to the evangelists and to the preachers and to everybody trying to reveal Thee all over America. For the world's sake, and Thy kingdom's sake, and Thine own love's sake, O Christ, we share Thy desire. We don't need to beg Thee. It is Thou who art begging us this afternoon. Oh, my children, in the CFO and in America, join with me in the most thrilling opportunity that the world ever saw. You could win the world, evangelize it in one generation. All this part that doesn't know me, if only you were ready. Thank you, Christ, for calling us. Help us to measure up for Thy dear love's sake.